Hi everyone, my name's Maddie, this is Creed, and I've been playing D&D for about a year now, and in that time I've played through a few different campaigns, one-shots, and I even ran my own campaign. And after my first campaign kind of exploded, it ended, as campaigns tend to do when they explode. The co-DM of that campaign actually invited me to one of his new games. And at first I actually turned him down because he said the restrictions for character creations were you had to be an elf, and you had to either worship Saloon, the goddess of the moon, or Mystra, the goddess of magic. And I told him that elves were kind of boring and generic, and I thought you couldn't really make a creative character with one. Until a few days later, he kind of decided to just tell me about a few different elves, and, he ran me through, like, Wood Elf, High Elf, Sea Elf, and still I thought they were kind of boring until he showed me the Eladrin, which, if you don't know, is an elf that is based off of one of the 4 seasons. And I was immediately in, because I love winter and I thought of a really cool character concept. So after that, I made Creed Madras, who is this winter Eladrin who weighs like 260 pounds and is like 7'2" and is really strong and really tough. So eventually, first session rolls around, and DM starts describing the first scene of people at the docks and, working and just trying to get somewhere, and boats pulling into port, as he asks me what I'm doing. And keep in mind, I've only had about a month of experience with D&D at this time. So I kind of panicked and thought, okay, what's my character's alignment? And at the time, it was Chaotic Evil, for backstory reasons. And worst thing I could think of to be doing at that time was poking a dead frog with a stick on the side of the road, which later that frog got a burial, don't worry about it. So the DM moves on to the next character, and I'll kind of introduce all the characters here. So first we have Daemons, who is a half-drow, and he is a Bard Warlock multi-class. And then we have Zorman, who is a Autumn Eladrin, who is a fighter and ranger. And then next we have Marin, who is a Sea Elf wizard. And we have Leofir. Don't get too attached to Leofir. Leofir is a Druid Rogue multi-class, and they are a half Wood Elf, I believe. And then we have Creed, of course, but you already know Creed. So, next thing that happens is someone runs out from below deck on one of these ships and jumps up on the front of the boat and starts yelling about how he's back! And he has returned, Starmantle! And he's yelling out to the crowd of people as he kind of just points to Creed and says, "Hello there, Wolf Boy!" And Creed just kind of gets uncomfortable and leaves. And Daemons hops off the boat and starts heading home as someone starts tailing him. That someone is actually Leofir, who decides this guy looks rich, maybe he has some money on him, and decides to pickpocket him. And they roll with disadvantage, and they actually roll pretty well until the disadvantage part comes in, where they roll pretty bad. But Daemons and no one around them really seems to notice, except for one person, all the way on the other side of the crowd, who really shouldn't have been able to see them, logically. This is Zorman, as what Leofir hears is a whistle and something jump over this crowd, and Leofir dives out of the way before this thing lands on them. Turns out to be a direwolf, which I don't know if you guys know, a direwolf is about 8 times as heavy as a normal wolf, so that's about 1,400 pounds that almost just crashed down on Leofir. And Daemons realizes that Leofir, this person behind him, just robbed him and tries to grab them as Leofir runs away. And Marin, who just happens to be in the crowd, casts Hold Person on him. Hold Person fails, and Zorman tries casting Spike Growth to slow down their movement. And Leofir just runs right through it, no problem. And so it looks like no one's really going to be able to stop them until, again, the wolf, named Moonwish by the way, jumps and tackles Leofir into the ground. After that, they kind of tie Leofir up, Daemons gets his money back, and everyone kind of has this small little interaction as Creed was just kind of watching the whole thing nearby go down. As someone walks up, and Daemons actually recognizes them and says, "Hi, Alton," as this turns out to be his brother, and he says, "Hey, I actually need to speak to the 4 of you." As he looks around and says, "Oh, actually you too," and points to Creed. And everyone, a little confused, decides to follow him, as he explains that the council wants to talk to all of them. So, we're eventually brought to the council hall. We're led inside, we see all the council members at the round table. And one of the leaders just kind of looks at us and goes, "Hi kids, you're going on a suicide mission today." Okay, that's not actually what they said, but that's what it felt like. So what they explained to us is that there are these 7 artifacts called the 7 Stars of Saloon, which were made in the name of Saloon. And they were giving us a mission, and we had to go out and find one of the 3 that they know the general area of. So what we learned is that all of us have been selected by a different group or person in charge of Star Mantle. Like, Marin was selected by one of the college professors at the Mage College. Zorman was selected by her mother, who was one of the heads of the council and leader of the military. Demons was selected by his father, who is also one of the council leaders and kind of runs the city. And Leofir was selected by one of the Fey creatures that lives in Star Mantle. And Creed was just kind of selected by the military, kind of like a grunt for the rest of them, because they didn't really expect Creed to survive. After that whole conversation, we kind of, get to make our pick, and we decide to go after one called the Claymore of Lunar Strength, which Creed is really excited about, because it is this really big sword that was owned by this guy named Blythe. And yes, there's a lot of stuff from Elden Ring and Monster Hunter that was put in this game. So what we know is that this guy who owned the Star of Saloon, who lived in Star Mantle, had it stolen from him in his sleep by a man named Ludwig, who then ran away, and then Blythe went chasing after him to go try to track him down, and we currently don't know if he's alive or dead. And they tell us that this is a top secret mission, and we're not allowed to say anything about it to anyone, and if we try to leave and, run away, we'll be executed. And we're not allowed to turn this down, so really our only option is to go, otherwise we get killed. And they tell us if we succeed, however, we will get either paid in money or remembrances, and remembrances are these small little, circular magic orbs that can give you feats or up your stats, just things like that, or you can even use them to cast spells. But if you want to keep one of the artifacts, you can, but you have to forfeit all of your reward in exchange for the artifact, and you have to wield it in the name of the city, pretty much. They give us a map of how to get there and where we're actually going, and then they give us a helm of teleportation, telling us that this man Ludwig is infected with a disease called the Frenzy Virus, which the only known cure is to basically burn someone alive, which most of the time kills them. So after that fun news, we're all kind of just sent out, and they're like, you head out tomorrow, there's a cart waiting for you by the gates. And everyone just kind of looks at each other, like, okay, we're gonna go drink. So Demons and Zorman kind of head out, and, childhood best friends, apparently, and they go to a bar. Zorman gets some tea, and Demons gets, I believe, whiskey. But meanwhile, the other 3, Creed kind of shakes a bottle in front of them, without actually saying anything, and it turns out Creed hasn't actually spoken the entire session. So he kind of just motions for them to follow, and they do. And they follow him to, sort of the center of town, to this old abandoned building, it looks like it's abandoned, with a sign on the front that says the Unlucky Elk, and it seems to be some kind of bar or tavern that is closed. And Creed unlocks the door, runs around the counter, and slides them a note that's kind of just asking them their order, so they kind of just give Creed an order, and for the first time, Creed says, okay, and that's the only word he says. And Creed makes them their orders, they just kind of have fun drinking. They have a little javelin throwing contest where Marin gets a nat 20 perfect throw in between the set of antlers, and Creed does not as good, but, fun night overall. And while they're all drinking and having fun, Creed mentions that they shouldn't go into the back shed that's in the backyard, and just kind of moves on after that. And then he tells them they can go get their stuff, and if they want, they can actually spend the night at the Unlucky Elk, because it has a bunch of spare rooms that no one uses. And in the morning, when Leofir wakes up, gets curious about what was in that shed that Creed mentioned last night, thinking there might be something valuable. So they sneak out the kitchen window, and Marin actually catches them as they're walking out, and they're about to open the door, and he gives them a warning of, hey, probably not the best idea. And Leofir just ignores Marin for some unknown reason, and opens the door, and with their dark vision, can kind of see a empty bucket, which seems like for water, and an empty trough. And they're just kind of disappointed at first until they can hear something moving to their side. As they look up, see a very large, almost 7-foot tall elk staring down at them, drooling. As Leofear panics, trying to get away from the elk, tries sliding under it, and accidentally corners themselves because of the weird angle they traveled at. And they're kind of just stuck up against this wall, and before they can do anything, it seems like the elk is about to try to eat them. Creed jumps in the way and just grabs the elk and smacks it and tells it bad. He didn't say it out loud, but kind of did a little motion. And Leofear runs out of the shed, kind of in fear. And Creed apologizes for that and says its name is Blitzen, and it's actually really nice, it was just hungry. But after that, everyone grabs their stuff. They, put all their stuff on the cart, and we spend like an hour trying to decide which route we should take. And it turns out Marin is actually a captain, and he has a ship, so we decide to put the cart on the ship, and we take a longer way, which is safer, but again, much longer. When we could have just gone through some mountains, which would have been a lot faster, where Creed grew up, actually, but it would have been a lot more dangerous, so no one really wanted to deal with that, so we went the longer way. So, put the cart on the boat. How did we put a cart on a boat? I don't know, but we did. So, we head out, just leave Starmantle. And we're traveling for a few days, and there's some interesting interactions with magic mushrooms that Leofear makes. And, kind of uneventful. Nothing really happens until eventually we run into a dam. And it's just in, like, the only way to get where we're going, so we have to either find a way around it or break it. And everyone's just kind of, thinking, trying to come up with something, how we can get through this, as Creed just takes a few steps back, pulls out his sword, which is a very weird crafted blade, and just sprints full speed for the edge of the boat. And Marin tries to get him to stop, and Creed just jumps with his sword raised up in the air, but right before he can jump, Demons thinks, well, if he's bigger, he'll probably have a better chance at trying to break the dam, so he casts Enlarge Reduce. And then Creed rolls a natural 1, and he gets his foot caught on the side of the boat and just face plants into the water. And everyone just kind of looks over the side and just, can he swim? As Demons just kind of shrugs, and then Creed has to use Phase Step to get back up, and he teleports up onto the dam as some little creatures kind of scurry away out of the dam. And Creed notices that there's kind of something behind him that scared them, so he turns around. And what Creed sees behind him is something that no level 7 player should ever see, because why would it be there? One of the most terrifying creatures in all of D&D. It's right there. Yeah, it was a beaver. So this little beaver actually has a stick. It points the stick at Creed. And Creed just thinks this is the cutest thing he's ever seen, until that stick starts kind of gathering arcane energy at the end of it. Yeah, Creed doesn't think this is adorable anymore. As the energy keeps building up, Creed realizes this adorable little beaver is actually a wizard. And before anyone else in the party can react, just in a split second, just BAM! Some big shockwave. Trees go flying. The entire water around us is shaking. And the beaver drops its wand, impaled on a javelin. Okay, it wasn't that dramatic. Creed just threw a javelin at it and it died. So after that, we took the beaver. We fed the meat to Blitzen and Moonwish, and Demons did something with the beaver's blood. I mean, on the bright side, we had a pretty painting of a beaver, beautiful red. After all that minor chaos in the first combat of the campaign, which the DM constantly tells me that doesn't count as the first combat of the campaign, but what does he know? He's just the DM. Anywho, everyone's kind of just relaxing the next day. Demons is just looking out at the water, watching out for anything bad. As we can all hear something kind of smack into the side of the ship as we're going through this river. And a few more. We can hear a creaking sound kind of below deck. As we hear a loud snap, and a few creatures start crawling up the side of the boat and just jump onto the dock. But I'm going to leave this video here because it's already getting a little bit longer than I wanted it to be. And if you guys like this video, I'll definitely make a part 2 and probably make some shorts in between that time as well. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. See ya!